Imagine a triangular prism pointing inward towards your center. Is it spinning or rotating a certain direction? Is it moving slow or fast? Is it aligned to your heart with presence? Or is it buzzing in different directions? Meet Luke Leffel, a multifaceted creative working in art, design, woodworking, coffee, sketching, and more, collaborating with his world around him, discovering and harnessing his superpowers, rooted in intention, connection, and reflection. Listen in to hear Luke's take on finding grounding through change in the middle of chaos, the transformative nature of acceptance, and why simple objects like a backpack hold beautiful symbolism. The music we are listening to right now is by Luke Leffel himself, titled Endings, from his Move Slow project. Discover and support Luke's work by clicking through the show notes and following along his journey. Live in the Lounge is brought to you by Lava Lamp Lounge, an art community rooted in love and care. If you like what we're doing here and want to support these conversations with creatives, consider becoming a $10 a month paid subscriber on Substack and support this work directly. Thanks for being here. Follow us on Instagram at Live in the Lounge, catch the replay on YouTube, Substack, or Spotify. And if you're not able to contribute monthly to support this show, please rate and review, share it with a friend, and pass it along in your circle of creatives. Thank you, Luke, for this thoughtful conversation, and I will continue to carry the prism with me this week. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Live in the Lounge. I'm here with Maura Parker, my amazing co-host, and we have Luke Leffel on today. Oh, just so great. Episode 4. Again, we're just flowing and going with chatting with creatives about what lights their fire, about just seeing where the conversation flows and goes, and just thrilled to have Luke on here, who's a multifaceted creative. And Luke, I would love to hear how you might describe your creativity and how that is showing up for you, even in your most recent time.
Yeah. How I would describe my creativity. Well, right now I'm leaning into a lot of my Gemini placements. And so I feel like I'm in a scene. It's a little chaotic. It's a little all over. But it's always been inspiration wherever I find it. Um, and so creativity, and we've talked at length even, and I've talked with a lot of people about like finding a synthesis of, like of art and how we like, my creativity has a really diverse range, and I feel like finding a way that to bring it all together has been a challenge until recently, until I finally worked through some of those things. So my creativity, in a word, I trying to get rid of all the negative connotations would be chaotic and just,
Mm.
letting it come.
And describe, you mentioned like all these things that you're working through. And so for a listener who maybe didn't look into what all that you do, remind us or tell us about just all of these parts of creativity, all these like parts of what you're doing, because I know it's multifaceted. And you and
Yeah.
I talked at length about like where are these through lines, but just kind of if you can share with us a little bit about those different sections of being a multifaceted creative, which is so relatable too. I think that that's a
Right.
part of communities that are like, oh, I'm like, I work in so many different ways. And like, yeah, how do I define myself? But would love to hear from you of just like of those different aspects of your work that you are doing.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, a lot of my work recently has been woodwork, furniture, different commissions that way, finding kind of some small wares, making bowls on a lathe, that kind of thing. I've moved into a little bit of staked furniture, which is an older tradition. It's a lot of fun. I'm sitting on the first chair that I ever made. Um, and so just moving a little bit through woodworking. I have a music project that's been like kind of slow going, and now I'm focusing a lot more energy into it. So it's an ambient. It's called Move Slow, so it makes sense that it's slow going, and I learned to accept that and kind of move into that space. But yeah, a lot of music has been really close to me for so long, and learning how it can be used as a tool for reflection and connection. And
Mm.
as I've like just it's had so much meaning to me, and then a way that I can move with other people through it. Um, yeah, it's been really beautiful. And then whatever else I can kind of get my hands into, whether that's, painting, or coloring with my kids. Like we all love painting and coloring. And honestly, as far as like collaging and making and origami, and sometimes I think they're like worlds away from me. They're just so good and blessed with it. So, um,
I love how they come to the slow making sessions for Lava Lamp Lounge. Like
yeah,
Luke and his crew, if you're familiar, Luke and his crew are there most Monday nights creating and making in the kitchen on the table that you built. So yeah,
yeah,
it's such
really
a
wonderful.
nice circle.
Um, so I'd love to hear more when you were talking about how music helps you reflect about different things. Is there anything you've been reflecting about with the most like recent piece of music that you were like messing around with making?
Um, my inspiration for music is still coming in waves. I think as creatives, like a lot of times, um, part of the journey is learning to harness that creativity and, and kind of focus it. And so for now, I'm in this place of like allowing my music to, speak to me as I just like walk up to my piano or my drum kit or guitar, or put a backtrack on and I'll just, jam along or something. And so right now, I think exploration, kind of like opening myself up to what it will look like. I think that's been the biggest thing. And then exploring how that can move into like somatic movement, physical movement of our bodies to connect with other people. I'm really big into contact improv right now, which is
Cool.
so wonderful. I love it. Ecstatic dance, different forms of movement and dance with other people, or just going to a show or a mosh pit or whatever it is. Yeah, so right now my music is speaking to me through a lot of like exploration and movement.
Do you have any local performers that you want to shout out who you've enjoyed seeing recently and
Wow,
kind of
that's a
doing some
good
of the work
question.
at?
Yeah, I mean, right now, there's not really a whole lot that like is coming to mind specifically. It's more kind of like I'm kind of brand new to like learning about the different types of music that I like in that way. And then there's a handful of bands that I'll like go see here and there, but I'm still exploring. Yeah, I'm actually curious what the scene is up where you are and um, what's drawing you to more into kind of like explore those if those modalities of dance and things like that, how they work for both of y'all.
Well, it's interesting that you bring this up because my only experience with what you're talking about is I go to a yoga studio in Ferndale on occasion, Samasta. If anyone is in Ferndale or local and wants a great studio, I would highly recommend. And one of the owners there, Joseph, he does a lot of ambient music producing.
Mm.
And during the yoga classes, he's really into curating these playlists for the yin yoga class that I go to.
Oh, yeah.
That'll kind of like I don't know, in a way collaborate with whatever we're doing in the room. And I got really into it over, I want to say over Thanksgiving, especially. And there was a really cool Icelandic ambient sound that he showed me that I was watching videos of on YouTube, and they kind of do some improv, but I think most of it is now like composed in some way. I'm not a musician, so I'm not as familiar with, but it was really cool. They were out in nature performing, and it was very
Wow,
cinematic and really powerful.
that's
And
beautiful.
it's kind of the first year that I think I've thought about like my yoga practice somehow being connected to sound and music and just
Oh, that's great.
full connecting those movements can be. So I don't know if whatever I'm saying kind of resonates with what you're talking about, but that's what I'm picturing in my head.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Well, and what it makes me think about is that music is creating this atmosphere. And
Mhm.
it makes me curious of the question, Luke, of like with your music, with your ambient sounds, which we're linking into the show notes. So if you want to check out and listen to Luke's Move Slow project or any of his other beautiful tunes, they take me to a place. And I would love to hear from you as the composer, the creator of what place does your music take you? And whether
Mhm.
you want to talk about a specific song, perhaps, or even the project as a whole. And it could look different every time, I'm sure, right? But is there a place that it's taking you, whether you're actually visualizing this thing and you're there, or maybe it's internal, but just, yeah, I would love to hear from you if that is something that you've thought about before with your work.
Yeah, I love that. It does take me places. And it depends on like the same song, and this is true for any work that I experience, but of my own especially. Um, it can take me it's so a lot of what I'm experiencing in life right now is just how much everything is just mirroring back to me who I am. The more I become aware of who I am, the more anything I see or do or experience in my life is just showing me more and more of who I am. And so as I move into, if I'm having a chaotic day and I put on one of my songs or I start to play one of my songs, or if I'm um, recognizing that I want slowness and I'm moving into slowness, it allows me to open up into that space. And I think that's what gets me excited about my work, with music in particular. And, I'm doing a sound bath after this, and I do them regularly. And I love offering that space, right? That kind of the space where we can all meet in this like place that is kind of like quiets the mind, allows us to, move in a way that really has meaning for us, and intention behind it. And so a lot of times when it's like a personal experience, it will be, um, it'll provoke thoughts of reflection or moving inward. Um, and yeah, so and then, I'm in this with my exploration, moving into like, okay, now I've noticed I've wanted to move a little bit. I've wanted to shift my body as I'm listening,
Yeah.
as
Mm.
I'm enjoying. And so what does that look like with myself and with others and for others?
For me, it really is becoming so clear in how big presence and reflection are with your work. And I'm
Mhm.
curious about your journey of getting to there. Like if you imagine, past Luke and everything, like, was there a shift, a moment, that this place in time or an experience that you had where you just leaned in more to those things? Or I don't know if that's like resonating, but that's where I'm kind of like my mind is going with just these big words of reflection and presence and your journey
Yeah.
through all this.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's always been there, right? It's like it wasn't at one point where I realized like, oh, this is what's happening. Um, I've what my realization actually was is that I had been like kind of suppressing or not allowing that space to open myself to kind of allow the music to be a representation of my inner self. And so over the last year to 2 years, I've gone through a lot of change and it's been very transformative. And so I think over that time, I've become more aware and more willing to accept who I am and then kind of move into a space where I'm allowing more and more to come through and more to like, kind of center me. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
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 And I was wondering, could you tell me a little bit about how you got into music, like from the beginning?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Memory.
I think, well, so piano lessons as a like 6-year-old was the first start. Everybody in my family sang. Um, I got a guitar that I had no idea what to do with, I think in my early teen years. And then it kind of just like it always evolved from there. As a younger teen, I was in like we called it a punk band, and yeah, I guess it was that. Um, and wrote absurd songs about like fast food restaurants and things. And so that was fun. And then that evolved into I took music lessons. The guy was supposed to teach me piano, but he played over 30 instruments. And eventually I got to the point where I walked into a place and he'd just be like, what instrument are we learning today? And it was short. It was like 6 to 12 months maybe, but I think it changed my framework for life in general. Like just that approach to just being willing to move in
Mm.
any space with whatever medium you have available to you. And then also the deep resonance, both literally and figuratively, with music. It kind of evolved from there. So then I would teach music a little bit. I would, like, just mess around for a while until eventually like things stuck and I found people with whom I can, play and join in and kind of
Mm.
share in this medium.
Would you consider then that music teacher that you mentioned that
Mhm.
was like, hey, which instrument are we learning today? Which one are we exploring today? Which for me as a creative, especially in the art education world, it's like, wow, like the importance of openness of trying new mediums, of experimenting,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
stepping into a place of curiosity rather than fear. Curious if you'd consider that person like a teacher, like of life, right? Because you were like, oh, it all transformed from there. I would love for you to like speak more about that. Yeah, if anything comes up or any memories that come along with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really curious. I mean, so anyone in anything in our life is a teacher of life, right? Like, I think he was maybe one of the first that kind of helped me realize that kind of like broke a lot of the like, so it was, I grew up, going to church and things like that. And it was in a church that he would teach lessons. But he would swear. And like I was just like, wait a second, this is a new, you broke about like a wall for me. Like I was able to see that like a good person could, like not necessarily follow all the rules. That was it seems small sometimes, but also like those moments are pivotal. Um or like I remember for like a Christmas um pageant or one time, they just literally threw hay all over the sanctuary. And I'm like, okay, so you don't have to keep everything like neat and tidy and like um so he kind of started to shift frameworks for me in like socially in that way, in that context as well. And so when it came into music and just being able to see the depth and the intention behind like what he kind of, like he would teach me drum kit by like playing a bass guitar, and he would teach me rhythm and he would make me match it, which is, pretty classic, but like for a kid still learning what it was to incorporate and to respond and learn how your environment, you can take part in it and let it shape you at the same time. That was just, yeah, that was very meaningful to see him kind of do that.
So I'm hearing that these like moments of rule breaking are really pivotal to sort of
Mm-hmm.
like how you're thinking about your creative process even today.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell me a recent moment that you had with music that was like a sort of like music rule that you broke that felt really energizing or creative for you?
Oh, wow. Actually, yeah. So I've been taking inspiration right now, especially in lo-fi and in ambient music. People are just putting out music all the time. And for me, this might be something of my specific age and generation, but like, like production quality is pretty big for me. And to realize that like I can put out things that might have mistakes in them or might seem a little cliche or not exactly how I want, which is a huge, thing with artists, right? Where like I want it to be perfect or
Oh, totally.
right? I think it's all of us. And then, so like right now, like I'm finding an arpeggio and figuring out ways to repeat it. And so an arpeggio is just a series of notes in a chord, right? Figuring out how to do that. And so most of my music, if you listen to it for the last few releases, has just been like figuring out an interesting way to have an arpeggio just kind of repeat itself and see if I can like shift it and just like kind of get in the zone for a minute with it and just being okay that that's all it is. And then I'm moving into, some other things that I'm working on, but like for me that was like, oh yeah, I could do that and it's okay to do that.
Yeah, it reminds me of these pivotal moments as a creative of giving yourself that permission slip, whether it's
Mm.
to hear it from someone else, you experience it on your own and just are re-reminded, but just these reminders of, yeah, you can put out a mess. You can, actually invitation to create 100 things. It's
Oh
about
yeah.
like quantity. And then from that, the quality will follow as you continue to like refine and figure out and do all those things. But yeah, we got to be able to put out a mess. We got to be able to break these walls to just
Yeah.
create and share and like let it be messy and let it be an experiment for sure.
Well, and when you say that, Morgan, it makes me think about like the system of just like being alive in the world, right, is very chaotic and very imperfect. I think that when we mirror that as
Mhm.
creatives, it's very energizing. And I think it can be very connecting.
Yeah, I think it resonates with a lot of people, right? Like, people are realizing that like production value is nice, but that's not where the meat of it is all the time. Like we're in these spaces that are malleable and imperfect and
Mm,
have tension and have beauty, and all of these things are moving through us all at the same time.
yeah. And it's reflective of you're making this art, you're making this music, you're creating these things for you, at
Mm.
that end, right? You're drawn to these sounds that you're creating together and curating in this way. And I'm really proud of you for just putting it out there. I think that,
Thank you.
yeah, it takes effort and it takes like self-encouragement of just being able to produce something and to put it out on these platforms for other people to
Yeah,
digest. And it was amazing. Like I did not know that
For
Luke
sure.
made, yeah, I did not know that Luke made any music. I feel like you shared one of them to your stories and I was like, "What?" And I just listened to it on repeat over and over and over again before I went to bed one night, and I was like, "Wow, like I didn't even know that he made music. Like this is so sweet." So
that's
I think
great.
it yeah, and it's nice to have that little element of surprise when you meet people and they are multifaceted and they're doing these things. It's encouraging, even as a reminder of me, where I'm not in the music industry or anything, but I love it. I'd love to
Mm.
create it. Think just things like that, where it's like, oh, but you could, yeah, like
Yeah, I think there's so much to like how I think for a while I got stuck forgetting that I could like just take chances, and the chances like there's a certain type of accumulation that happens like for a while. I think it's like kind of with social media, people are like, okay, I'm just going to put out a video and it's going to go viral and that's going to be the thing, right? So almost taking that to like any of our art projects, like, oh, I felt the passion in the moment, I made this thing, and then I put it out and it sucked, because nobody liked it. But then when we get to this point where we're just like we're free to put out whatever expression it is of our current moment, and just trust that like we were just doing that, like you said, for ourselves, because it's
Yeah.
it's that expression in the moment, and eventually it hits for somebody, and
Mhm.
then that accumulation eventually becomes like our collection, our work over time. But it's not going to happen until we just start to put it out there and allow what's going to hit for someone to hit and what's not to fall away.
Mm, yeah, it's like being in those states of allowing, being those states of free fall. And
Yeah.
I know that you have a meditation, like a practice of manifesting and giving yourself that space of allowing,
Mm,
and was curious to hear you talk a little bit more about that, whether it be like describing us through a certain ritual or practice that you're resonating with in the current moment, or maybe even how you got to that point, whatever you're feeling about that. But I know that, you have these practices that are set up for you.
yeah.
And also curious as someone where I struggle with consistency, I struggle with routine
Mm,
and ritual and showing up. This is why I create a Lava Lake Lounge so people can show up with me
oh
because I
yeah,
need, I need to show up, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think for me, um, my journey has been interesting with routine, and I think, yeah, like it seems to go around in our circles to where a lot of us are just like, it might just be also a human thing to try to find some sort of, semblance of consistency. Um, but for me, it was rooted in acceptance first, to the point where, and this is true with like things that we care so much about and are very meaningful to us. This is true with like that stuck feeling of like I have this feeling and I want to do it, but I don't know what the next step is, and I've been sitting and staring at this page for hours or whatever it is. But like as soon as we start to accept that feeling, accept that that's part of our process, it starts to dissolve. And so for me, for instance, my yoga practice, like it was years, like I just like I wanted to do more of it, get it more into yoga. It was a very it is a very centering process
Mhm.
and practice. And but like I would wake up and I'd be too tired or I'd be too too sore for yoga, which is funny because it actually helps with that. But um, it wasn't until I just was like, just get up and do like I don't know, one downward dog into upward dog and you know two push-ups and call it like you did it. Once I did
Yeah.
that, like I would be like, okay, I can do that. And I'd find myself 5, 10, 15 minutes later, and I had been done so much more than that. And so that I've just taken into so many different areas of my life. Whether it's my journaling practice, which for so long has been, like I used to journal and then I got out of the habit and I wanted to be more consistent with it. And I'm like, just write down 5 things you're grateful for every morning. And when I started doing that, then I added like a surprise from the previous day. And then I added, an intention for the day, right? So like and now like I'm daily writing through these different things and creating, what turns out to be, an hour of, self-reflection and caring for myself before I go into the day. And then realizing that 3 days passed and I woke up, late and had to get the kids to school or something. And then like I didn't do it. And then recognizing that that's part of the practice too, right? So for me, a lot of those things are just like it's all grounded in acceptance and then yes, in gratitude because I get to, sit down and I get to journal, when I think of it, when I have the time to, I get to take my kids to school and forget about journaling because I have these beautiful people in my life. So for
Mhm.
me, that rooting in acceptance has been foundational for me to move into those practices.
If you could
Yeah.
connect, and quick thought, I know more, and then I'm going to hand it to Maura, but if you can connect all of what you said into a symbol, or I mean, you could add a color if you'd like, but yeah, I'm just thinking of like what would be a nice symbol of everything that you just said. Does something come up for you?
Hmm.
And what
Not
I'm
come
thinking
back
about
to you
here
on
is
that.
like these, right, these rituals, these practices, and then your flow of doing these things, maybe falling out of it, coming back to it, doing these things, coming back to it, even if it's just the 1 to 2 minutes.
So I'm learning to speak from things that I don't understand, but a spinning triangle came to mind, and I have no idea why.
Cool.
It
Yeah.
has no meaning to me. I tried to make meaning of
Triangle.
it, and I have no idea.
I'm gonna play with making meaning of it because something that was actually spinning came to me mind and too. Like I think about a triangle for me, and I'm not sure if this is connected to the root chakra in any way, but this feels like a grounding. Maybe
Mm,
that's more of a square, but yeah, no, there just feels to be like a nice solid shape which I could even connect into like this solidness of the routine or that reflection point or that inner connection that's happening.
yeah,
It's up here. I don't know. But then the spinning of it feels like it could spin in a lot of different ways. It could spin consistently, routinely. Some days
yeah,
it could spin like this. Some days maybe it's like super slow. But even in my mind, I'm recognizing like, oh, maybe it's just always moving though. And then it's just about finding that balance through it. So even the days that get swamped up in other stuff. And even I could totally resonate with that of like, oh, I didn't show up in this way that I really wanted to and like needed to. That's
yeah,
okay. Like I've got
yeah.
kind of a thing.
I love it. I like the idea of the triangle, maybe inverting and just pointing to our center and pointing to our connection with Earth and rootedness. And then as it moves, it might sometimes feel chaotic and it feels like it's maybe moving through us, but then always like kind of resonates and resolves itself back pointing toward the center
Well,
while we're making meaning.
yeah.
I'm going to be thinking about that triangle all week because I can really resonate with what you're saying about routines. I'm someone who has ADHD. I've kind of come to the acceptance that you were kind of talking about of some days I make time for the things that I really wanted to be doing, like journaling or
Mm,
like yoga, and other times I'm prioritizing something else in my life
yeah.
and kind of having gratitude for that thing, right? Like, so like right now I'm moving and I'm like, I get to move, right? So that means that, yeah, that journaling's taking a little bit of a back seat. But I think what you said is really helpful for people who are struggling to build routine, because I
Mm,
think that it takes a lot of the shame out of like not always having the perfect like hour wake up ritual, but rather
yeah.
knowing it's like a goal that you come back to and you just
Yeah.
keep coming back to it. And that's sort of the process rather than like the consistency, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like for me, something that's been really powerful is recognizing the difference between an intention and a goal. An intention being like just a mindset and a way that you want to focus your who you are and the way you kind of conduct yourself as opposed to a tangible external outcome, right? And
Mhm.
goals can be helpful, they could be even motivating. But really it's the inner work that we want, right?
Right.
And the goal is supposed to be a reflection of that. And so if we fixate on this goal, and we're just like, oh, I have to achieve this, then we're forgetting that like what we're trying to actually achieve is kind of centeredness and authenticity and being who we are in our creativity. And so for me, like focusing myself on just like setting an intention of being present and growing, then like if it's an hour long routine or if it's like, like a single push up or if it's just like looking at, uh, you know, I don't know, looking outside and seeing that it's sunny or cloudy or whatever weather you like or whether you don't like and just being grateful for it.
Yeah.
Any of that, you've set your intention and you've accomplished it.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be.
Allowing for that flexibility sounds really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's so sweet. This is a fun question. So I was looking on your website, which is really well done, by the way, might add. Just nice, really enjoyable. I really enjoyed the video in the beginning.
I
And
appreciate that.
again, linked in the show notes, y'all. Check out Luke's website. Just plugging you. But yeah, I was interested in reading about your series that is titled Ordinary Oracle. And so
Yeah.
you say, yeah. So you say, the Ordinary Oracle Project is a series that encourages us to reflect on everyday objects and notice how they contain so much of the wisdom we need to navigate our lives. When we look at our environment and really take it all in, we can see that even the simplest things can serve as reminders of the beauty that lies within. And what I really loved about this project is the titles. I was really drawn to your demonstration of creating this object, but then the titles felt like the narrative was coming through.
Mm,
Yeah, question for you is which object from this project maybe comes to mind for you right away? Like I'm looking at all of them, so I can obviously scroll through, but is there
yeah.
one that is coming to mind for you right now that you're connected to? Yeah, I kind of want to pause there and see if anything, even like,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Do you have an answer to that?
I love that. Yeah. So it's actually an ongoing project, and I have a few more, and eventually I have plans to make a full month worth of these, so that every day throughout the month, you can just pull a card, and every time you see that item, around your house or on a walk or whatever the item is, it can remind you of that kind of that simplicity and going inward, even with the simplest things. For me though, that project started with the backpack. I think it was a friend asked if you were any item from the thrift store, what would you be? And I said a backpack, um, because it like me and my connection to the bags that carry my life. And a lot of us artists and creatives carry around multiple bags full of
Oh yeah,
everything. I think it's an ADHD thing too. Like we never want to be without that one thing.
fully.
And like just they go everywhere with us and they carry so much of who we are. And so the backpack, well, I don't know that I resonate with being a backpack. I do resonate with the idea of like this thing that like is just always just this like manifestation of like who I am. And you like look, and their bags are so personal, and some people are willing to share. Just go through my bag and get the thing out. Some people are like, I'll get it for you. You know, like there are all these like specific representations of who we are, and they can be so versatile, and they can be like super cute. They could be like, you know, ratty, and that's the vibe, or that's just because I need a new one. You know, like it could be like so many different representations, and yeah, so that's the one that I think probably has the most meaning for me.
Um, Morgan's actually asked me on this show before, like, what do you put in your backpack if you're going on a creative walk? And I would love to ask you that question.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, and let me frame it. I think I
Yeah.
said, so Luke, if you were to go to a place with one bag, I want to know, and it's just a one day thing. Like say you're just dropped there, you'll get picked up. It's all good. But like what is that place? Jungle, desert, city, Europe, da da da, safari, beach. What is that place? Somewhere familiar, unfamiliar, right? So
Yeah.
describe to me that, and then what's in your bag? Food and
Whoa.
taken care of, by the way. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a big question.
And can I also state the purpose? The purpose
Let's do it.
is, I'm going to say like creative artist exploration.
Yeah. Um, so I think it would be the woods, slightly outside of like an equipped but small town. Um, because I love running into town and seeing the people there, stopping at a cafe and a market, and there's a certain social interaction that I just yeah, I love. But it would I'd be dropped slightly out of town. Um, a lot of conifers around. Probably pine. Spruce is good, but pine's great. And hopefully some sort of water. And I would have one of these um, controllers and a
Mm.
computer and probably a sketchbook at minimum. There would probably be a lot more in that bag, but in a book or two for reading for inspiration. But that usually for me is a lot of my process, and when I'm traveling, or just even going out around town, like I sometimes I have a smaller one of these I just like carry with me with my iPad and just like just jam, um, or you know like sketch or write and just kind of let things flow that way. I love that question. I'm curious how you both answered it.
Yeah. Well, and your response too, I think it says so much about who you are. Like something that pops up for me while you're speaking is like, oh, he's collaborating with nature. You know,
Mm,
he's
Hmm.
he's sitting with the pines and he's ready to either make some beats or jam, or I can see you like pausing and listening to the birds, maybe
oh yeah,
sampling it.
yeah.
Yeah, right. So I think that's a really unique quality about you as a creative is this really beautiful highlighting focus of presence in your environment,
Mm.
nature, with people, the connection. Like it really runs through your work, and even your response to that continued to run through. And it's
Well,
reminding
thank you
me,
for that reflection. Thank you for
oh
that.
yeah. Mm. Well, it's reminding me of this conversation that I had years ago, but it was one of those that you just remember. And it was with Ashley Jew Jonas, one of our a professor in the art department at UD, but she kind of said to me like, you as an artist, as a creative person, it runs through everything you do. It runs through the way that you show up to wash your dishes. It runs through
Mm.
the way that you show up to cultivate and create your space, what kind of things you're making around you. It runs through the way that you make a meal, that you have a conversation, that you show up and explore. And it
Oh
was a
yeah.
big moment for me where it's like, I was like, whoa, it's not just Morgan, this is my art and this is me as an artist, as a creative, but it allowed me to expand that as to like, that is me. This is
Mhm.
all actually just, it's all extensions of me. And I And that's, I think, a really beautiful work as a creative person is to think about where those threads are running through. But I
Yeah,
see
that's
that so,
cool.
so clearly in what you're doing.
That's a really great and helpful reflection because I think I do forget that a lot of times. I mean, so much of my work, the synthesis that I feel like I finally found is it's making and appreciating the spaces we find ourselves in. Whether it's, the music for, what I'm doing or, making a piece of furniture for someone's house or a cabinet or, um, and a lot of my professional life has also been creating environments for, like I've opened a lot of cafes and restaurants and like just making people feel hospitable and welcome. Um, and I forget sometimes. Like that's so I don't know how I forget because I do it all the time, and it's just really really nice to hear that reflection back to me as well. Because yeah, like being present in any of these situations is like the only way that I see how to like create and to be fully there.
Mm.
Do you have like a certain, because you talked about how a lot of what you've done has to do around like creating spaces that are hospitable.
Mhm.
What are details that you find to be extremely hospitable?
Mm. Wow, what a question. That's great. Um, I love focusing on creating spaces that are intuitive, that people can move freely through, that most of the time people forget why it felt so good to be there. Certain cafes do this well. Certain, people curating their house or, a store, even like a park or certain streets feel this way, right? But like for me, it's been cafes through most of my professional life. And you walk through and like you just like you've gotten your pastry, you've gotten your coffee, you've found a table, sat with your friends, you like walk out and you're just like that felt good. And like so many people just like I found that aren't really thinking through or talking about why it felt good. Maybe it tasted great, maybe, like it was, you know, well lit, things like that. But like for me, you can go to the details and find and like that it was like where the line was and how it wrapped around in a certain way and why like the other cafe that you went to it just felt a little goofy but you weren't sure why or like maybe you just don't go back there as much but you don't even realize that you don't go there as much because like one just felt like you were invited in to become a part of the experience and one just felt like maybe a little less so. I don't know, or you weren't invited at all. Like it was just, like so for
Yeah.
me, going through the details of like how people are going to walk through a space, how people are going to like the first thing that they're going to see, the third thing they're going to see, if it's conducive for conversation and why, if it's conducive for being solo and why. If it's, like, lighting is, huge. Music and
Totally.
temperature are huge, right? If there's, padding on the bottom of a chair so that, in a loud cafe, like chairs don't go too crazy and like, or like sometimes you want people not to be sitting as long. And so you do that, like and create like a more kind of upbeat place where people are moving in and out more. So for me, it's asking a lot of those questions of like what feels good and why and to whom, like there's a lot of different people groups that have a lot of and a lot of individuals, we all have our preferences. And so finding out ways that we can embrace those for different people, depending on, like how we want to invite and encourage people to be a part of it.
The three superpowers that are coming to mind for you, Luke, are reflection, intention, and connection.
Mm,
And I feel like
Yeah.
presence is just like this umbrella. And while we were sitting here and you were talking about this, I actually looked up the definition of intention. Because, right, I know I hear that word so often, but it was beautiful. It says, I was a little surprised by this too. So the first thing it says is like a thing intended, an aim or a plan. So it
mm,
reminds me of all these little details that you're talking about that you're able to be sensitive to reflect on, to think about, to ask those questions of why, which is a superpower, truly. And then
mm.
the second definition, it actually says medicine, the healing process of a wound.
Whoa.
I know. I thought that was really cool. So tell me about as we're wrapping up here a little bit, tell me about your healing balms lately.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to be a reflection and connection, aren't they? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. I have been going, like I said, I've been going through a lot of changes in my life over the last few years, and I moved into a new place. I recently got a new art studio. I have a coffee cooperative project that I'm working on to start a roastery, um, and have big plans for all of these things. And so the change in the middle of chaos, sometimes it feels like, that grounding can be hard to find.
Mhm.
Um, I also recently went through a breakup and understanding myself in relation to that and alchemizing that and moving into a space where I become strong in myself in just a different way that those things are my therapist said like everybody should go through one or multiple. And I'm just like, well, should and I'm like, really? And then like, but they shape you and they change you to understand who you are if you embrace that part of it, because everything is a reflection, right? And so like moving into that space of change for me and accepting where I am, the healing balms, the healing in general that come from like because we all have pain and wounding and sorrow and like all these like emotions that we give these kind of negative connotations to, but really like they're a part of the experience of being a human.
Mhm.
We're not going to experience love without its absence. We're not going to experience connection without loneliness. And so for me, the the things that are healing are when I get these moments of connection with people. I get these moments of recognizing where I am in a moment. And then now, because I'm recognizing that those are readily available for me, like there's so much connection and beauty available to us, the moments of loneliness then start to become beautiful. Because then I can be like, oh, I'm feeling this because I remembered this thing over here. Or I'm feeling this because this is a part of being human. Like, not even because it's for something else, but because loneliness or patience or desire, all of these feelings that seem like they're based out of lack, they're actually just a reflection of an emotion that we're in a moment where we're recognizing that we have like so much available to us, including these, kind of these smaller things. So for me, smaller, I don't like that, but just a different iteration of emotion. Um, and so for me, like the healing balms, yeah, connection, people showing up, people, sending that text, hey, are you going to be at this event? That's one of my favorite things is when people are like, yo, are you coming to this? And I'm like, it's just so nice when people say that. People hosting spaces like Lava Lamp Lounge, like people, just like being open in their homes and in their lives and with their words to just share, and those things really bring a lot of healing. And I've realized like that's what I want to do with my work and with my life, just show up in that way.
You're doing it.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm more curious if you have another question. Something that came to mind for me is what's getting you excited lately? What's kind of filling your cup or lighting that flame, whether it's a current project you're working on? Yeah, what's just been getting you excited lately that we could talk about?
Yeah, it's wild. It's hard to think like what's not getting me excited lately. Like it's a lot. Like I've got so much happening and it just keeps coming and I fucking love it. Oh, can I say that on here? I don't know if we can
Yeah.
swear. Forgot to ask. Um,
Yeah, please
but
do.
yeah, it's so beautiful. So we've got so I work with home sound baths. We do some really beautiful sound baths. A few times a month, and now they're ticking up. We're doing more of them. We're doing some bigger ones. We've got a new one coming up at the Museum of Art for the spring equinox, and we're bringing in East Forest, an artist, to play with us, and it's just like super fun and super exciting to be a part of such a good community of people. Um, and it's just really beautiful. So I'm really excited for where that's going and the things that we're doing there. This new studio space to make more furniture. I have a lot more space to take commissions. I've got a couple in the works that I'm excited about. Um, yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And yeah, this coffee co-op that we're putting together. I've got a few people interested in kind of joining, and I have, a lot of professional experience in roasting and, teaching service and latte art and things like that. And so I'm excited to kind of give some other people some of those, teach other people some skills and learn from them as we kind of create this. So talking a lot about that. And yeah, this music project with Move Slow, incorporating some more dance into it, some upbeat stuff. Hopefully, going to partner with some DJs and do some live instrumentation, um, do some dance sessions. Maybe just go down to the park and invite people to dance as well, or just lie down. I don't know. We'll see. But
Yeah.
yeah, so much going on,
Mm.
and that's about half of I think what my schedule looks like for this week. So it's like for me, that's a lot of fun because I love to move in and
Mm.
making stuff happen.
What would you say to someone who's struggling to find grounding through the middle of chaos, through the middle of change?
Mm, acceptance is the first thing always.
Mm.
Gratitude next for me. Um, it's
Mm.
always going to feel chaotic, and the more you fight it, the more you're going to feel like I still can't get ahead of it. Um, but when you accept it feels a little crazy, that's when you start to clear your head. Um, Alan Watts with his quote about, no amount of anxiety has ever, changed the outcome of a situation. Like if we're just always thinking and worrying about those all the moving parts, it's going to happen whether or not we're worried about it. So what if we just accept it and not worry about it, and then we're in a clearer state so that we can just kind of move through what we need to. And then we find those pockets of, 5 minutes to ourselves, 1 minute to ourselves. Oh, I got to take a drink of water. Like any of these moments that we have to like rest and just be, yeah, take my own advice, I guess. But yeah, for me, grounding in the chaos is acceptance. Because I think it's always gonna, this life right now, it always has a tendency to feel chaotic. Whether that's because we have so much to do or because like, oh shoot, it's a Friday and I don't know what to do and I don't know who to call. That's a real feeling too, and that feels chaotic. That feels uncertain, right? But when we move to
Mm.
accept it, then we have agency. We have, this way that we can move forward.
Yeah,
This is so good.
I'm like
Thank you.
asking for a friend.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Well,
It's
I
so easy to forget, right? It's so easy to
know.
just be like, oh, everything's moving around me. But we're literally always spinning.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think it's wise to bring up acceptance and just like not trying to push to keep the status quo sometimes because change can be really good.
yeah, change can be good. And also, like, I've been reflecting a bit lately on like the feeling of feeling stuck in the midst of everything feeling chaotic, which seems almost like it seems like we're not stuck if there's so many things going on or, something like that. But once I started to just like hold things with open hands, like the things that were for me have hung out and they've treated me well, and the things that weren't, like they've had the opportunity to move on because I wasn't holding tight.
Hmm.
Um, but that's so much easier said than done because I've held too tight to some things, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Like you let
acceptance.
the water rush. What is that phrase about letting the water just rush down your back, like letting it flow, letting those things just be in this
Yeah,
flowing. And I know we only have a couple more minutes, and we'll have you on again, Luke, because I feel like this is now like giving us into another portal where I just like I know other things I'd love to talk to you about at some point is community and relationships and this
absolutely.
building that you've been doing because with all of your multidimensional work and working through all these parts there's also so many relationships and community and connection and all of these things that have been really supportive for you as a maker as a creator.
That's
um,
huge.
so we'll have to pin that for another time of our chatting for sure. Hmm. Y'all, thank you for sharing space today. Is there anything else? Anything that you'd like to kind of pop in, Maura? If you do you have anything from any of this that you want to leave us with?
Well, I just want to thank you, Luke, for coming on. It was so nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I loved hearing about your music, your woodworking, the communities that you're building, and I really liked your backpack answer. I was thinking about like a place that I would want to go, and when you talked about being able to get into town to like be able to have coffee somewhere and connect with someone,
Mhm.
that was something I didn't think about when I answered that question to Morgan, and I thought it was a very thoughtful
What did
answer.
you answer?
I answered that I wanted to be somewhere cold on like a
Mm,
remote island, like in the Arctic, probably.
nice.
Um, just because I'm always finding myself on Google Maps, like looking into remote areas of Canada.
Oh, that's great. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, and I loved, and I'd encourage anyone who's listening to this to check out Luke's website to see what he's doing, because even the titles, oh my gosh, I could talk about the titles for a whole episode because your title for the backpack is Who's Carrying Who? And then another title with the furnace, it's You're Warm, You're Fed, Rest Easy. And like there's just these little sweet titles with your images, breathe slow, accept, release, all these things. So check
Mm,
out Luke's work. He's a wonderful example of someone who is working through art, through design, through multifaceted medias, through connection, community. There's so much here, Luke, and I'm grateful to be
thank you.
in your circle of just witnessing you evolve. It's amazing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this has been like super fun. Really, like I was surprised at some of the questions and surprised myself with some of the answers. And I loved hearing just like being able to have this dialogue with y'all. Yeah, and I would love to talk more about community and things like that. That sounds really good. But yeah, moving forward, yeah, if y'all want to find me, lukeleffel.com or just Luke Leffel on pretty much any social. And I'm working also in the business with business consulting and just like small business and helping people kind of get started making their own spaces too. So if anyone wants to reach out with a project or something like that's where I come to life and really love connecting with people in that way. So yeah, thank you so much
And
for
you're
this
good
space.
at it. Oh, of course. Sending you so much love. And I'm gonna log off and just continue to listen to your album, Move Slow. It really like set me up for this conversation. So
Amazing.
I just love this ambient noise and even thinking about dancing to it. So thank you for inspiring us today, Luke. And we'll definitely have you on again for Live in the Lounge, but appreciate your time. And Maura, always good to see you.
Love seeing you, Morgan.
I
Awesome.
love
Yeah,
you
good to meet
guys.
you.
Bye. Have a great
Everyone.
day. Yeah.